It's strange how quickly life can change. One moment, everything is fine, routine, predictable. And the next, you're staring at the sky, unable to move, cold creeping into your bones, your mind fighting to understand what just happened. That's exactly what I experienced on what should have been just another winter day, a day like any other. I woke up early that morning knowing I had a long day ahead. The cold was unforgiving, sharper than usual. The kind of cold that doesn't just make you shiver, but steals the breath from your lungs. 20 degrees Fahrenheit. That's the number I saw on the thermometer before I stepped outside. A bitter reminder of just how cruel winter could be. But I had a job to do. A good friend of mine was out of town, and with a snowstorm rolling in, their driveway would soon be buried. I had promised to take care of it before things got worse, so I layered up. Thermal undershirt, thick sweater, heavy winter coat, insulated gloves, double-layered socks, boots that had seen more winters than I cared to count. And yet, despite all the preparation, I could still feel it. The cold found every weakness, slipping through every small opening like an unwelcome guest. My breath hung in the air like thick smoke as I walked outside. The world was eerily silent, the kind of silence that only comes when snow blankets everything, muffling sound, swallowing movement. I could hear my own footsteps crunching against the frozen ground as I made my way to the trailer. My four-wheeler was parked exactly where I left it, coated in frost, the metal glistening under the pale morning light. I reached down, wiped the ice from the seat, and grabbed the ratchet straps from the back of my truck. My fingers were already starting to go numb inside my gloves, but I ignored it. I had work to do. I loaded the four-wheeler onto the trailer, tightening the straps, making sure everything was secure. Everything was normal. Just another winter chore. And then, nothing. The next thing I knew, I was on the ground, flat on my back, staring up at the sky. For a moment, I didn't move. I couldn't move. My mind was foggy, slow, like I was waking from a dream I didn't remember falling into. What happened? I tried to think, but my thoughts were sluggish, uncooperative. And then I felt it. A warm weight on my chest, the press of soft fur against my frozen body, a cold, wet nose nudging my cheek. I wasn't alone. It was my dog. He was lying on top of me, his small black frame a stark contrast against the endless white of the snow. His breath came in short, worried bursts, his ears were twitching at every sound, his eyes locked onto mine with an intensity that sent a shiver down my spine. He nudged me again, harder this time, as if to say, "Wake up, Dad. We have to go inside." And that's when I realized the truth. I was in trouble. Cold isn't just something you feel. It's something that takes. It steals your breath, your strength, your sense of time. It wraps itself around you like an invisible force, tightening its grip with every passing second. That's what I felt as I lay there. The freezing ground pressing against my back, my body refusing to respond. I tried to move my arms, but they felt heavy, like they weren't mine anymore. My fingers were stiff, barely curling when I willed them to. My breath was slow, uneven, little clouds of white mist forming above my face. My vision blurred around the edges, dark spots creeping in. That's when I knew. I must have hit my head. I didn't remember falling. I didn't remember hitting the ice, but there was no other explanation. Maybe I had slipped while stepping down from the trailer. Maybe I had lost my footing, my boots sliding out from under me. Whatever had happened, the result was the same. I was on the ground, motionless, my body already surrendering to the cold. And then there was my dog. He wasn't just sitting beside me. He was lying on my chest. His small frame was pressed tight against me. His warmth, the only thing keeping my upper body from freezing faster. He was staring at me, ears perked, alert, like he was waiting for me to do something, waiting for me to move, to speak, to let him know I was still here. I tried to tell him I was okay, but my lips wouldn't move. My jaw felt locked, my breath shallow. I barely managed a whisper. "Buddy." The sound was barely audible, but it was enough. His tail twitched, just slightly, and he nudged my face again, more insistent this time. Then he let out a soft whine, shifting his weight, trying to stir me. That's when the fear hit me. How long had I been out? 5 minutes? 10? An hour? I couldn't tell. I had no idea how much time I had lost, how long I had been lying there, unconscious, as my body slowly froze. I had read about this before, how hypothermia doesn't feel like dying, not at first. It starts with numbness, then exhaustion. And then, as your core temperature drops further, it starts to feel warm. Comfortable, even. That's when people make the fatal mistake of closing their eyes, letting the cold take them completely. I wasn't going to let that happen. But my body wasn't listening. I tried again. Just my fingers this time. Move, damn it. Move. Nothing. My dog let out another whine, pushing his nose against my cheek, licking my face. He knew. He could sense it. He could feel me slipping away. I had to move. Now. My body was failing me, but my mind screamed at me to fight. Move. Get up. Do something. But the cold had already stolen so much. It had seeped into my bones, made itself at home beneath my skin, replacing every ounce of warmth with something empty, something hollow. I clenched my jaw, willing my fingers to move, but they barely twitched. My limbs felt like they were weighted down, as if they didn't belong to me anymore. I knew what was happening. My core temperature was dropping. Blood was retreating from my extremities, trying to keep my vital organs warm. That meant my hands, my feet, my arms, they were the first to go. If I didn't get up soon, they wouldn't be the only things shutting down. And then there was my dog. He refused to give up on me. He pawed at my chest, whimpering louder now, his body shifting as he pressed himself harder against me. His warmth was the only thing keeping me from slipping further. His presence the only thing reminding me that I was still here, still breathing, still alive. I sucked in a sharp breath and forced everything I had into my right hand. Fingers first, then the wrist, then the elbow. Pain shot up my arm as my muscles finally responded, stiff and slow, like trying to move through cement. My dog's ears perked, his tail wagged just slightly, and he let out another sharp whimper, his nose bumping against my cheek. He knew. He knew I was trying, and he wasn't going to let me stop. With everything I had, I turned onto my side, my shoulder pressing into the frozen ground. Agony tore through me. My limbs were like dead weight. My head spun so violently I thought I might black out again. No, I couldn't let that happen. I gritted my teeth and dug my elbow into the ice, dragging myself forward inch by inch. My dog stayed right beside me, walking slowly as I crawled, his nose against my arm, his warm breath puffing against my sleeve. The house wasn't far. It should have been an easy walk. But now, it felt like a mile away. I focused on the porch, the faint glow of light from the window. It was so close, but I wasn't moving fast enough. The exhaustion was overwhelming, like a wave trying to pull me under. My dog must have sensed it, because he barked suddenly, loud and sharp, his front paws stomping against the ice. He pushed against me, nudged my arm, almost as if he was trying to push me forward. "Don't stop now, Dad. You're almost there." He barked again and again. The sound cut through the haze, through the exhaustion threatening to take me under. I dragged myself forward. I wasn't going to die here. Not today. Not like this. The house was just feet away, but it felt like another world. My breath was shallow, my arms barely responding. Every movement felt slower, harder, like I was sinking into the ice instead of crawling over it. The exhaustion wasn't just in my limbs anymore. It was in my chest, my mind. I had to keep moving. But God, I was so tired. My dog knew. He could sense it. His barking grew more frantic, his paws shifting against the frozen ground. He nudged my arm again, more forcefully this time, almost knocking me off balance. I exhaled, slow and shaky, and pushed forward. The wooden steps to the porch were covered in frost. The railing was just within reach, but my fingers were numb, useless. I couldn't grip anything. My body refused to cooperate. I needed help. My dog whined, circling me, his tail flicking anxiously. Then, before I even realized what was happening, he jumped up onto the porch. I watched as he turned toward the door, his small frame tense, his ears perked. And then, he started pawing at it, scratching, whining, barking. He knew we were close. I used that moment, that small burst of adrenaline, to lunge forward. I grabbed onto the first solid thing I could find, the bottom step, and forced my body upward. My knees hit the wood, sending a dull ache through my legs. But I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. One step, then another. My dog barked louder, his whole body shifting with the force of it. He wasn't going to let me give up now. I reached for the doorknob, my fingers barely curled around it. The metal was ice against my skin. I twisted. Nothing. I tried again. My muscles were slow, weak. The third time, the knob turned. The door swung open, and warmth hit me like a tidal wave. I collapsed forward, my knees hitting the hardwood floor inside. My dog followed immediately, rushing in beside me, his tail wagging furiously. He licked my face, nudging me toward the living room. "We're inside. You made it. But you're not safe yet, Dad." He was right. I was inside, but I was still freezing. The heat from inside the house hit me like a shock to the system. My frozen limbs burned as the warmth wrapped around me, my body trying to adjust too quickly to the drastic change in temperature. But I wasn't safe yet. My clothes were drenched from the snow, my skin numb to the core, and I was on the verge of collapse. I forced myself to move. Crawling, dragging myself forward, I made my way toward the living room. Every inch felt like a battle. My body wanted to give in, to just stop moving altogether, but I knew what would happen if I did. Hypothermia doesn't end when you find warmth. It fights back. I had read about it before. The afterdrop effect. When you warm up too quickly, the cold blood from your extremities rushes back to your core, dropping your body temperature even more. If I didn't get out of these clothes and warm up properly, I could still go into shock. I reached the couch and grabbed the thickest blanket within reach. My hands barely worked, my fingers like unresponsive blocks of ice. My dog was right beside me, watching me with intense focus, his warm breath puffing against my cheek. He wasn't celebrating, wasn't relaxing. He knew I wasn't out of danger yet. I struggled to peel off my outer layers, the wet fabric sticking to my skin. My jacket came off first, then my gloves, my boots. Each piece felt like a weight being lifted, but my body still shook violently, my muscles spasming in response to the shock. My dog burrowed beneath the blanket with me, pressing his warm body against my chest, curling into my side. His warmth seeped into me, steady and unwavering. He had been keeping me alive outside, and now he was doing it again. I don't remember falling asleep. One moment, I was pulling the blanket tighter, still shivering, still aching. And the next, I was waking up to soft light filtering through the window, my body sore, my head pounding. But I was alive. Alive. And my dog? He was still there. Curled up beside me, his breathing slow and steady, his fur pressed against my arm. He had never left. Not once. As I laid there, the memories of the night before the coming back in fragments and flashes. I reached out and ran my fingers through his fur. He stirred, lifting his head just enough to look at me with those deep, knowing eyes. He had saved me. There was no doubt in my mind. If he hadn't been there, keeping me warm, nudging me awake, refusing to let me give in to the cold, I wouldn't have made it inside. I wouldn't have made it at all. Some people say dogs don't understand emotions the way we do, that they don't love the way humans love. But I know better. Because that night, my dog didn't just keep me company. He saved my life. And even now, as I sit here typing this, he's lying next to me, just like he always does. The same unwavering loyalty, the same quiet presence that's been with Ma every day since he came into my life. Some bonds don't need words. Some connections run deeper than we can explain. Because some friends, some guardians, never leave your side. If this story touched your heart, if you've ever experienced the incredible love and loyalty of a pet, let me know in the comments. And if you want to hear more stories like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Because in a world that can be bitterly cold, the warmth of love, true, unconditional love, is what keeps us going.